used. It's a really nice. It's got a whole bunch of. It handles SPL really well.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you're hitting it pretty hard, it sounds like it's compressed, even when it's not. I've done a couple interviews where I sent them my audio, and they're like, "Wow, what did what is that? You have compression and EQ on there?" And I'm like, "Nope."
And the filter is pretty interesting. Is that just your setup?
This is a China special.
Okay.
I think I got it on Amazon. It's just a little pop filter for the front that was a little lower profile than those gigantic, pantyhose on a sewing frame.
Yeah, that's what me and Brennan got. I like yours. It's interesting.
Oh, I got one in the closet. It's right over there. Everybody's got those.
And also, one more thing is that, do you plug it in? Is it USB or is it an auxiliary output?
It's an XLR output, and it goes into the
XLR
audio interface.
Okay, cool. That makes sense that you would have it though.
Yeah.
It's more for my wife. My wife's a vocalist, and we write some music and do some things here and there just for our sake. We're also in a wedding band together. A cheesy Midwestern wedding band. It's
right, I gotta write that down. Did
excellent.
not know that. I'm being so serious right now.
Wait a minute, I changed my mind. Can we not talk about the cheesy wedding band I'm in?
Oh, we don't have to.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So normally we stick to guests that I know we're recording, but I don't know why I started. We're gonna probably cut all this, but normally we just talk to guests that are focused in the horror world. But honestly, man, I'll try not to fangirl over you, but one of the games that you're the composer for, I've loved since I was a kid, and it's horror-ish. Plus, it's our show, so I don't give a shit. So, I want to talk to you. So, all right, I'll shut the hell up and we'll get started.
No, you got to do the intro, so you can't shut up.
That's true. Son of a bitch.
Just keep talking.
Welcome to Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hi, Brennan.
Today, we're talking with Nelson Everhart, composer, teacher, and musician. Say hi, Nelson.
Hello, Nelson.
And I'd just like to talk about something real quick. Have either one of you guys heard of Buzz Book Expo?
Only about 30 times, but I could use a refresher.
I've never heard anything about it. Tell us more.
You guys are in luck. This is the last episode where we're talking about it because this is coming out 2 days before Buzz Book Expo. Hey, everybody. That includes you, readers, podcasters. I gotta cut this part out. I thought I had it up. It's a different email from the same person. It doesn't have it on there. So unprofessional.
You just gotta name different people until you can get it up.
I was trying to do that. I thought I had it. Sports fans. Fuck. It was the email right underneath the one I opened. All right. I'll start from... all right, let me tell you. It's for readers, book reviewers, podcasters, librarians, booksellers, lovers of great scary books. Buzz Book Expo 2020 is just around the corner. Buzz Book Expo is a live streaming event in which publishers will be announcing all the great new horror fiction releases they have to offer through the coming year. There will be interviews, Q&As, presentations, even book covers, and more from all your favorite horror publishers, all for free. Spend 2 days immersed in exciting book talk from publishers and authors alike. The event will take place on August 22nd and 23rd. All information, including links to the expo, can be found at Mary Sangi, that is MARYSANGI, that is MARYSANGI.wordpress.com/BuzzBookExpo 2020. We hope to see you there. Nelson, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate it. I don't really understand how Twitter became so popular, but pretty much all my childhood, you name it, are on there and have an account. And now I'm an adult, so I'm like, holy shit, that's the guy that did this game and that game. And let's talk about that for a little bit. What got you into, way back, what got you into music?
My whole family was kind of musical. My grandfather on my mom's side played trumpet, and my mom played clarinet and piano, and my dad played drums. I have a picture of me when I'm like 3 years old, sitting in my dad's drums, and I got drumsticks in both hands and the bottles hanging out of my mouth, and I'm just like drumming away. So that tells everybody that picture. And another one, just I'm like 6 or 8 years old or something like that, and I'm listening to the double LP of the Star Wars soundtrack in these gigantic white 70s headphones that my dad had, and I'm playing with the calculator. That's what kind of nerd I am from the OG.
What was
it? Was destined.
Absolutely. Was it New Hope or was it Empire?
It was New Hope. I don't think Empire had come out, honestly. I was born in 74, and if I was 6, that's like, well, yeah, okay. It had probably come out, but maybe I hadn't quite seen it yet. That score was the Star Wars score I always kind of credit with getting me into film, because it was just like, it was the first time I was, just surrounded with all of these instruments and all this music, and there was something about the fact that it was married so clearly to the picture, and the one was commenting on the other to make something more powerful than just the images themselves.
Absolutely,
that's what appealed to it to me.
John Williams is like one of the most recognizable composers I think ever in the film industry.
Yeah.
So besides, you name it. What was it? Star Wars, Indiana Jones was one of them too, and
E.T., Superman. The list goes on.
The list does go on. So Brennan, before I start yammering away, how about you jump in real quick? Because he is also very heavily influenced in music, and he's a music teacher, and he plays piano, the keyboard, like you too.
So is keyboard your primary instrument, or?
I would say I studied trumpet at school, where I went in Toronto, but I was always kind of like, I was always messing around with the keyboard just because that was how you could write music back in the day. I had like a little Casio Cheesemaster 3000, I think it was. And so, I'm playing with the bossa nova rhythms and stuff like that and recording my little thing. So the keyboard is kind of the interface that you kind of needed to play with if you're going to get into it, into writing. And I just, I started, I think, playing Billy Joel songs and stuff like that. And then just slowly, started writing my own things and messing around with it. I mean, I think if I was a dancer, I'd want to be a choreographer. And if I was a painter, I would just always want to create the things rather than just kind of listen to them or, absorb them. I think that was my thing. Do you play keys?
I teach a lot of piano lessons. My main instrument is bass, but the route I took as a teacher, there's only so much mileage you can get out of bass. After that, you stand in front of a classroom full of kids. They want to hear harmony.
Right.
And also the piano doesn't transport
kids today
super
and their
well.
harmony.
So I know. It's like I'll give you a bass note, and you can figure out the upper.
There you go. My brother plays bass, and he's probably a better musician than me. So
it's such a cool instrument, not to harp on my own instrument, but just because it is, for the most part, a melodic instrument, but you have to have that fundamental understanding of harmony in order to be halfway decent at it.
Sure.
I'm just thrilled. I was worried at first because you said, that initial picture was you with drumsticks, and Patrick is a drummer, and I thought I was going to get to make some drummer jokes, but that went out the window when I was really afraid at first you were going to say you were a drummer. So
why stop? I mean, do it anyway. I love a good drummer joke.
Yeah, let's hear it.
How do you know when there's a drummer at your door? Doesn't know when to come in and the knock speeds up.
I was going to go simpler and just, make light of the fact that you probably have no idea what we're referring to when we mention harmony.
I just hear loud bangs in my head and just
Patrick hit stuff.
All right, SpongeBob. So, Brennan, do you have any more questions on that, or can I jump into something else?
No, you can go ahead and take us on.
Well, hold on, Brandon. Who's your favorite bass player?
Oh God.
That could go on a while. So the school I went to. Sorry, this is an even longer answer than you need, but the school I went to was a relatively small school, and I had never played upright before I got in. And when you got in, you kind of had to, day one, they, you know, met you at the door and they said classical or jazz, go. And jazz was really closer to what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I ended up, you know, discovering a lot of people. Paul Chambers absolutely is up there. Jimmy Garrison is a huge one. I fell in love with everything Coltrane did, and I think his quartet is just like the top notch as far as that style of music.
Yeah.
For electric, oh, I don't know. That's a little bit tougher. I love Jocko, but I also love, you know, grooves.
If you study jazz bass at all, you have to say Jocko.
Yeah, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. They string you up if you don't.
All the students at my school had the hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know,
players.
and they all had to learn Teen Town as well.
Yeah.
If they couldn't play Teen Town, they get booted from
Get
the
out.
university.
Right.
Patrick, go on ahead.
All right, sure. So I know that, well, at least I read that your first video game soundtrack was the Crow City of Angels. Was there anything before that?
I don't think so. There were a few that kind of happened at the same time. I was living in Toronto, and there's a company called Gray Matter up there, and they had some success doing kind of side scroller, like smaller kind of side scroller games, I think. I don't remember the first one, but the guy, the president of the company, had programmed it all, you know, himself when he was 13 or whatever, and you know, was kind of taking it into his company. So they had a lot of success, and it was sort of the first era of the 3D games where people were trying to figure out, you know, like how the interface worked and how you know, what does up represent on the joystick? Okay, well, you're walking forward, but is that like into the screen away from me, or is it taking into consideration the perspective of the, you know, where the guy is pointing? And it's like, it was just a struggle constantly. So there was another game called Perfect Weapon that we did at the same time. It was also, I think it was PlayStation 1, and then Crow City of Angels. And I think that was about all that we got out the door. We were working on a comic book property called Gen 13 at one point, and it kind of went back to the side scroller thing, and I thought it was just a much stronger game. I was excited that we were getting back into something that it seemed like, you know, people were more comfortable programming for.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so that's that. So those two games were hotly contested. I was seeing it years later. People were talking about the original PlayStation, like what was the worst game on the PlayStation 1, and both of those were fighting for first. Because in Perfect Weapon, the dude was like, you know, who's just constantly going around, and he would get, because, you know, people were still experimenting with the 3D stuff, they would get stuck on the geometry of the level. And so there could be like a pixel, you know, just sort of out of, you know, place, or a polygon that didn't line up, and you'd be walking along this flat rock, and all of a sudden you would just stop. And to give feedback to the player, the guy says, "No way." And so most of the game was trying to stop him from just going, "No way, no way, no way." But luckily that wasn't my department, so I just could kind of focus on the music part of it.
I wish I played that now, but I was born in '89, so I don't know if I would have.
Shut up.
Yeah, no, I got big into video game. I got a Nintendo Entertainment System when I was 3, so that's not 92. And Super Mario Brothers 1, the side scroller, not the one with the not the older one where it was Mario and Luigi.
Yeah.
So Super Mario Brothers 1, that was fun, and I just couldn't beat the first level though. I was 3, so I wasn't very good at it.
I was never a completist when I was a kid, so it's like I would just sort of start the games and probably never finish them. I don't think I finished Mario. I don't think I finished any Mario except like Sunshine later on.
Okay. Now, so you were born in 74, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were young or old enough, I guess, however you want to look at it, to really enjoy and love the 80s and the arcade era in its prime.
Yeah. I definitely spent some time in arcades in the 80s. Yeah.
I don't remember when you moved to, and forgive me if you already said this, I don't remember when you said you moved to Toronto. It was Toronto?
Yeah, I think it was 11 or something like that.
All I could find is that you moved around in New England. Brendan and I are from Massachusetts. Did you
Okay.
happen to live there?
No, I lived in Connecticut,
Okay.
and I was born in Delaware, and then I lived in Connecticut for 8 years, and then I moved to Maine for 2 or 3 years, and then moved to Toronto.
Were you a military brat or anything like that?
No, my dad was in manufacturing. He worked for a company called Cheeseboro Ponds, and then like he was working. They made like Vaseline intensive care and Vaseline products and lipstick and kind of personal care products. And then he got transferred to one of the divisions, which was their shoe company, Bass Shoes. And so he made shoes for a while, and then he kind of went to. And then we went to Toronto, where he was at the head office. So he was just sort of upwardly mobile manufacturing executive, and we just kind of traveled all over doing that.
Yeah, because I don't hear any Canadian accent whatsoever.
Maybe a couple drinks, a couple 2-4s, maybe it'll start coming out.
That's like me with that's like me with my Boston accent.
We'll go out in a boat.
Now,
sorry, eh? I mean, I can pull it out when I need to.
Watching Trailer Park Boys for me, I started noticing the fun little things like, what are you talking to boots? Like, he really emphasizes that.
All right, I got to correct you. Everybody, a lot of Americans think it's like boot. Okay. What are you talking, a boot? It's a boat. Yep. Like oat and a boat.
Okay.
To be more absolutely accurate to that.
I appreciate it. In case I mock it like an asshole American, I want to be correct.
Listen, we need all the friends we can get right now.
To be fair, Patrick, you might have known that. We discovered, recently in podcasts that when Patrick tries to do an impression, it doesn't go well. So he might have been going for oat.
Yeah, we were talking with the two actresses and one of the screenwriters on Host last night, and Morgan Freeman came up, and Brendan informed me that it sounds like Nixon. And when I told my wife, she said, "What the fuck are you doing? You are terrible at that."
I love bad impressions.
Patrick, do you want to give us
one? Sure. Who do you want me to piss off or make fun?
Do Richard Nixon. See what happens.
I don't know what he's
Morgan Freeman.
I don't know what he sounds like. See, I can't do it. I'm not a crook. I can't do that shit.
Now you sound like Clint Eastwood, actually.
So, what was the experience like doing that first video game, the sequel to The Crow? Like, that's, I don't know, but I would imagine that's one of the first film to video game adaptations. I mean, film to video game. Did I say that right?
Yeah. I mean, probably like that was kind of, it got to the point where you practically couldn't make a game that wasn't an adaptation of a, movie or a TV show and then we started getting into comic books and stuff. There's one called 13 Bullets that Acclaim was working on for a bit. It was kind of exciting. And then Acclaim went out of business. But yeah, all of the kind of marketing for the property is sort of done for you. So I think a lot of the bean counters that, sit at the top of the companies are like, we don't have to market this at all. I don't have to buy any advertising for it. Everybody knows what the story is. And, if they want the game or not, they already kind of know that. But getting back to the question you asked me, it was a lot of fun. It was kind of electrifying. I remember going in there, and it was the first time that I'd sort of imagined that the stuff that I was doing at home in my basement could be, a career that somebody's, interested in paying for. And the visibility was really cool. I remember going into the company Gray Matter, and we were working on that Gen 13 game. And I remember walking down the aisle where all the testers were playing it, and they have to have the sound on to test for sound bugs and stuff too. So I was hearing my music from about, 15 different stations, all at different points in the thing, and just watching the testers go, I hate this. This is terrible. Just because they'd heard it a million times. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is it's powerful that, anything that you're going to do is going to get out there on that kind of level. I went to a buddy of mine had his wedding in Italy. And so we went to Italy. That happened to be the summer that I think Turok Evolution came out. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking, I think we were in Venice, and walking past a video game store that had it in the front, window. And I was just like, oh, wow. So it was exciting. I didn't know that could have happened. I actually went to high school with a guy who was doing the interface art, like the on-screen, your score and the health meter and stuff like that. And I just sort of knew him in passing from high school and happened to meet him on a BBS. This was before the internet. I was just chatting with him, and he was like, I work for a company that does video games. And I'm like, that's incredible. And I was like, so is there anything I could do to do? And it just later came up that they needed another kind of audio designer guy. And I was like, okay, so keep your network wide, kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing with Evolution, I remember when that came out, because my very first video game when I was 12, my mom was cool with me buying it. I don't know if she actually knew what the content was, if she would be cool with it. I would get my video games in a few places. One of them was Toys R Us. Super weird place to get an M-rated game. But I got Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. I just remember you had this blade, and you could cut off like lizard creatures' heads, and it would just gush blood. And then the game that you composed, one of my truly favorite games, is Turok 3, Shadows of Oblivion. And that was some dark shit. And it was weird. It was a weird game.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. I remember going, is this the storyline? The guy that designed the game, Dave Dinspear, I think they had a gigantic hit with the first Turok. And then with the second one, just kind of played off on that. It was gigantic. The whole studio, I was working in Austin, Texas for that game at Acclaim's development studio down there. And that whole studio kind of took off with Turok. Like that game let them kind of just sort of flourish and build up the studio. And then I think by the third one, they were trying to figure out what new things they could do. And it was, maybe coming up a little bit spare with it. But I mean, everything was just cranked to the nines. It was, the weaponry was insanity. There was the one, I don't remember the names of any of the weapons anymore, but there's one that like went out and attached to the dude's head and then exploded. And then there's the cerebral bore, which latched onto a guy's head and then drilled down into it.
Lovely.
For the time, it was kind of big. I remember in Germany, they didn't allow blood in video games then, so they colored it green.
I remember that option, and I played with that because I thought it was neat. But so for Brennan, I don't think played it, and for anyone that hasn't played it, the very first level is you're in this city, and it's just the music matches it. Everything's dark. There's like some weird Lovecraft fucking monster tentacle thing coming from a building.
This guy, yeah.
At one point, you're in a sewer, and you see this guy have his upper torso ripped off, and his legs fall on you. And then there's cops trying to kill you. The whole thing is just like, I don't know what this is. I'm like a 13, 14-year-old kid. I'm like, this is fun though.
And it was a game that started off being about hunting dinosaurs.
That's true.
Torso crawling on the floor.
So I can't find any, before I even hit or reached out to you, I couldn't find any document style type video on YouTube of any of the Turok games, which I thought was weird because as a whole, it was a very popular game for the time.
Yeah. Online stuff. I think I've seen people do playthroughs here and there. And there was a guy I did an interview with a few months back. His name was Dynamite on YouTube. And I think his channel he did some other interviews with some of the programmers and animators and art guys and stuff. So he had more information on that game than I ever knew. It's like, I worked in the studio where that game was happening, and he was like, now this guy said that this happened. And I was like, I was in my little studio in my headphones doing my job. It's like, there's probably a lot of fun going on out there. But I didn't know kind of most of what was going on, because you're sort of insulated in the sound department, because it's like nobody else really knows what to do with you. It's a different application, I think, than doing art, assembling that and doing animation and the programmers. And so there's always like kind of the clicks around it, but sound is kind of the end. Like everything else sort of has to be done before sound comes in.
Right.
So it's sort of like, they've already checked out and you're like, hey guys, let's go. What can we do? It's like, well, there's a list over there on the fridge. Just, get to it.
You're necessary. They just don't want to deal with you.
That would make for...
It's the professional equivalent of, playing in a bar in the corner. They tell you it's a stage, but it's really, level with the floor.
Yeah. It used to be a table.
That would make for a funny mockumentary show.
I know it. I've heard of some projects like about doing. I think there was one that never got around to seeing it. And I guess nobody else did because I think it's gone.
I'm sorry. Was that just me, Brennan, or did he cut out?
I lost him for a second. Yeah.
Am I back?
You're back. I lost you at the whole answering or replying to the mockumentary part.
It was a terrible answer anyway, so we'll just pretend it never existed.
Okay. So I was wondering if you ever watched G4, the video game channel that was out it was like 2002 to 2014. A little bit. I asked because they had this series called Icon, and I really loved it when it was out. And it'd be documentaries on game developers, video games companies. There was none on Acclaim, but again, I feel like Acclaim was a huge company back then. And what was, I guess this is probably a weird generic question, but what was it like to work for them? Because you were working at a time when, you said it yourself, 3D games were kind of new, and it was a whole new world. And I like them. I still like my N64. I like 2D scrollers too. But
yeah,
what was that like? Because were you a gamer as well back then, or?
The problem with like anytime you like meet real gamers, it makes you stop and go, okay, I'm not really a gamer. I enjoyed games from like way back in the day. Like we had an Atari 2600, we had an Atari 5200, we had an NES, we got the PlayStation, we had a Genesis, and then my brother and I got a Sega CD for the for the Genesis. And I mean, I've had all of the systems and been aware of the stuff that's on there, but never had, like, I was usually goofing around with music or playing in bands, or like I did musicals for a while, and like stuff like that. So I never had like the amount of time necessary to really devote to it to where you get kind of sucked in and can't really let go of that. So I guess I understood it, but I never really felt like I was a super gamer, like into all the stuff. I'd certainly heard of Acclaim. When I was working at Gray Matter, they had some kind of publishing deal that was going to go on with Acclaim, so I knew about them. And then also I remember specifically the day when somebody brought in Turok. The N64 had just come out, and somebody brought Turok in, and I remember everybody just crowding around in the conference room playing that and going, oh my God. And then like flash forward, a few years, and I was at the studio with the people that made the game. So like it was cool. It was really neat to just be doing something with that. I always knew that I wanted to write music for something. I didn't just want to make albums or things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but my music always kind of went with something. So like when I was in college, I scored, independent films that the film students were doing. And there were some dance like groups that I did some music for. And things like that. So, I always loved kind of doing the film stuff. So you were mentioning the early scenes in Seeds of Evil, and it was like, I remember scoring that being like the most interesting part. Like writing the music for the levels is interesting too in another way, but I like kind of telling the story, trying to really get into, what does the music do here to underline, all of the things that you want the audience to feel. So working for Acclaim was really cool, and it was a giant company that, I had something that I could add to their stuff. My first game there was a South Park Chef's Love Shack.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because I've always liked writing in different styles, and that game, it was like you don't know Jack, but then there was all these like kind of classic like Atari games, mostly like things based on Atari games like Stampede and Asteroids and things like that. So I got to write like my John Williams, space, over the top space theme, and I got to write a Western kind of Americana Copeland theme for the Stampede game, and everything in between. And the game show music was all like Waka Chicka 70s game show quasi porn score.
So South Park Chef's Love Shack, that was literally in the heyday of South Park, and that was either the year of or after the film came out, which again, my childhood, like I was a huge fan of that.
I remember it coming out. I remember the team went out to see it one night, so I think it was either at the same time or right after the game came out.
And I still think it's funny. I mean, I laugh at a lot of things, but for the game that you were on, what was that process any different? Because the content, especially for the late 90s, I gotta imagine was like, are we gonna get away with this? Did you feel that way at all?
Well, yeah. Some of the questions are like, wow. But I also remember I was editing Isaac Hayes' his chef dialogue, and it's like they just basically took that tape and were rolling for like hours, and so he was in there and just reading his lines and just getting loopy by the end of it, and just like going off on some directions. You're like, oh wow. I mean, nothing bad. It's just the dude who's like, just talking about things because he's just like bored of what they're doing, and he was more interested in having a conversation with somebody in the booth. So yeah, that was it was really cool to be working on a property that was that big. I always have, on any team, I have like a different experience than the rest of the team mostly does, even the sound guys, because like when you're writing music, you're like, so that's like, it's one person's responsibility, whereas like the writing and the art and the animation, even sound design, is usually like a few people are working on that. So you're kind of in your own little world, and then you play it for people, and they're like, okay, that's good, more this, less that. And you're like, okay, and then you run back into your cave and work by yourself some more. So it's, my experience doesn't usually match up with other people's on it. I heard about people from other stuff just having like, not great time on a game, and I was just like, oh really? I had a blast by myself.
Well, me and Brennan are both writers, so we can relate to the enjoyment of being by yourself for most of a project.
Are you both doing horror stuff?
Typically horror, anything dark fiction, which, just darker subgenres.
Whatever springs to mind, which is usually dark and morbid. So, Nelson, I'd actually love to hear a little bit more about process. Go as big as you want, but I guess we could start with when you kind of enter the process. Do you get cues as far as what they're looking for? Do you just get video of gameplay and free reign? How does it start?
Usually the game isn't done to the point where there's like gameplay. I did a game with King's Isle called Wizard 101 that I think came out in 2000. It's been going on for like 14 or 15 years by this point. And when they started, they had a few levels together because they were launching this whole gigantic game. So I got to run around in that game a little bit. Occasionally there's like a little bit of the world geometry in, and I can run around and see it. I get inspired by the visuals, so I like to see the architecture, of where you are, or, the land forms of where they are, the colors. And then that gives you, I usually like to feel the pace of whatever it is. So that's sometimes a little tricky, because usually if you have NPC characters in a game walking around, that's usually kind of like the last thing to go into the level after they get kind of the whole thing designed. So sometimes I just get like still images of, these are some of the main characters that are going to be in this, game, and this is a screen for that, and this is the main village that you walk around. So I get those things, and then a lot of times I'll ask just to get an idea of where their head's at, I'll ask for references from like other, TV or film scores or, any music really, just to get an idea of where they, what they kind of envision for it. And I make sure to preface it with like, I don't know if, what I do will come out sounding like this, but it's good to kind of feed my brain, just some ideas. And then I usually try and kind of step away from it for a little bit, just to let my subconscious kind of work on it. It works on it for a little bit, and then I come back in, and I usually have something that I kind of want to say, or like an angle I want to start with. So I'll start goofing around on that and see if it, breaks anything loose. And that it's gotten to the point where the muse shows up on time, when it's like I sit down, I kind of know some of the tricks that I can use to make myself start to kick something out. Occasionally actually a lot of the time I'll start something just to try and get started on something, and then usually throw away the first 8 or 16 bars or something, because it's like it took me a while to get to what I was really trying to get at. So that happens a lot. And then it's really I've been working with a lot of the companies that I work with for a long time, so there's usually a really good rapport. I love working with friends where it's like you trust them, like what they're going to give to you, and when they're BSing you, and when they're honestly impressed with something that you did. So that's been a lot of fun. I actually met the guys at Kings Isle who I've been working with for over a decade. I just met them like a couple years ago for the first time in real life, because I'd been working with them online for forever, since the game started, because I was up here in Cincinnati and they're down in Austin. So that's kind of trippy. That says a lot about what I was talking about before, where it's like my experience is nothing like anybody's experience. Actually making the game is like, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to go into any area of it more if there's something
Oh,
else.
I definitely have follow-ups, but real quick, I noticed so many parallels with writing. Patrick, I don't know if you picked up on that too, but just one of the big ones was just kind of making that time to work, and trying to get in the headspace of, okay, I've got to do this. And even where you said I'm going to write like 8 or 16 bars, even if they're going to go in the garbage after, just again, just to get the words down.
Yeah.
Even just to get the momentum moving. And then even to knowing who you can trust to take a listen to or a look at what you've done and give you honest and very useful feedback. There's just, the parallels there. I thought that was pretty cool.
Agreed.
So I'm interested, actually, do you ever get, in your years of experience, either not enough direction or an obnoxious amount of direction as far as what they're looking for?
Almost everybody has been, super respectful of the, a lot of people, I hear the phrase like, I'm not a musician, from people a lot. Like, I'm sure you hear, well, I'm not really a writer, but I think that, and so there's usually that kind of respect there for, just what you're doing, which is always super helpful. So it doesn't usually go too far. I mean, occasionally they can, offer things that are just kind of like, maybe it's not really landing, or it's like, it's just not something that I'm super comfortable with. So I don't 100% get it, but usually I can kind of grab what they're sort of getting at, even if they don't have the words, to get there. And then, or I just completely, improvise my way, do a little sideshow and, or soft shoe dance. And then like, here, this is what you're thinking, right? And they go, oh yeah. Okay. That works too.
Close enough.
So there is always like a fake it till you make it kind of element to it, when you're working with, new relationships. I had a thing happen. Like I'm working on a game with the team that I mostly haven't worked with before. And it's like the guy I'm working with on sound, he wanted to show the guy, the producer, like the main guy in the game, a tune. And it wasn't done It's kind of like, all right, here's like a sketch and stuff. And it's like not knowing that guy's sensibilities. I'm not sure how his imagination, is going to take it. Like, I don't know how good his imagination is where he can go, oh, well, Nelson usually does this and takes it that way, because we don't, really know each other that way yet. So that's a really good, that's a place where I think the relationship becomes important, and the trust factor, where it's like, okay, well, I'm trusting you to tell this guy this isn't done, and, make all the excuses before he listens to it so he's not confused. I find it best not to tax anybody's imagination, when you can help it. It's like if you had to hand pages over, you wouldn't hand, like just sort of these half-formed paragraphs over, because you're like, they're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about. You'd probably need to fill some of that stuff in before you felt confident, somebody else is going to be able to, sort of pick that up and figure out where you're going with that.
Yeah. One of the first things I picked up on, and not as a parallel to writing, but more of a parallel to life in general, you kind of started off with almost everybody has been super respectful, and I find that's generally not true. It sounds like you've had a good experience, because most people in their jobs can't say almost everybody is super respectful, whether they're talking about coworkers, customers, or supervisors, whatever.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I think it's more just like apathy, where it's like it's more like if somebody had something bad to say to me, or wanted to just like talk me down or something, it probably happened when I didn't hear it. I have been I have like a couple of handlers at some of the companies that I work with, and it's like, these are the guys that know me, and they like know how to take this to somebody if I have an idea. And so if they're bad mouthing me, I have no idea. So I am fortunate in that respect.
Well, I won't go into detail because I'd like to keep my job, but I absolutely have had experience with that. Well, I don't know music, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you know what you're doing. There's not always respect towards the music person, but you definitely get a little bit of leeway in that department. Now, as far as your personal process, I'm curious about key particularly. How do you make decisions about what key a song is going to be in? And I guess I would even add, do you put any stock in that whole idea that, like, D major is for music of triumph, F major is for more calm music? Do you put any stock in that idea at all?
No, that would force me to have to remember 12 keys of moods or something. It's usually, I mean, yeah, I'm probably locked to the keyboard, so it's like, the white keys are usually a little safer, when I'm composing. But what I like to do is change the key, to modulate and change the key a lot during a lot of the level music that I write. So this is the wallpaper music that you're hearing, while you're running around for 20 hours. And I like to try to make that music interesting for as long as humanly possible. So one of my tricks is to, be changing the keys up constantly. So I have wound myself into some strange keys a few times, and it's usually like the easier keys to play in keyboard. But I was doing a sheet music project for something, and I have musicians yelling at me because they're like, D flat minor. What were you thinking? And I was like, I wasn't really thinking, your key that I was going to transpose into that. One of the biggest things I wrote for Wizard 101 was like the Commons theme. It's like Wizard 101 is like a Harry Potter MMORPG, Harry Potter inspired, magic school. And so that the Commons theme has become like, everybody's heard it a million times, and it's really happy, and it was a pretty successful theme. And then I had to transpose it into other keys, and it just got ugly from there. So there's no real method to it, other than just kind of where I'm feeling the stuff going and modulating usually.
Yeah. I'll tell one quick story, and then I'll get away before the people who just came here to hear about Lovecraft tentacles and torso eviscerations completely bail on us. But when this whole thing hit, I started teaching piano lessons from home over FaceTime. And I had one student who was most of the pieces he was working on in his method book were in G major, but their piano was pretty much exactly a half step out of tune. So in order to demonstrate everything, I had to mentally transpose all his music to F sharp major, which is, as you know, a bass player first and a piano player second, was mental gymnastics.
You're used to working in C. Yeah.
Exactly. I like my white keys as well.
Well, if I may, so I have a question. Do you guys, like, when you're writing, to try and get like in the mood, like I was talking about in the process, that there was I like to kind of have ideas sort of swirling around but not focus like too hard on them. Do you guys have any tricks to, like, shift yourself into a direction? Are you turning the lights out? Are you lighting candles?
Brendan,
Patrick, you want to go first? Or?
All right. So I guess the only quote unquote trick is that if I got an idea and I'm like, oh, I like that, I go, what if? And then I roll with that. And if I get stuck, sometimes now usually I work on two things at once. That way, and I was doing this before we heard an interview with Josh Mallerman, the dude that wrote Bird Box, but then he articulated it where I'm like, that's what I kind of do, where it's like if you get stuck in one, I jump to the other. And if I, for some reason, get stuck in two, I'm just like, I'll write some notes in my notebook of another idea.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work for that doesn't work for everyone.
You're really chasing the inspiration where it's like, if when it runs out, you're like, oh, well, it ran out.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I believe we got one life, so I'm like, I'll see where this goes. For real quick example, me and Brennan talk about, like, he's newer to writing. I've written in the mindset where I want to be a novelist since 2013. And I was just telling him, I was like, oh, yeah, so I wrote 9 books, and they're all first drafts. And he goes, you never went back to them? I'm like, I've literally never looked at them. I remember them all, but he's like, I couldn't do that. I'm like, well, I got other ideas.
Well, and expanding, because what came to my mind first too was also that working on two things at once. And what I kind of liked about the way Josh Mallerman put that forward is that the idea behind that is, yeah, you can jump back and forth, but a lot of times you almost kind of fool yourself into beating writer's block with idea number one, because in the back of your mind you have idea number two to fall back on. And just because you have that fail safe, a lot of times it kind of opens up avenues. And the other thing I would add to that, and I don't know how or if it translates to music, is just kind of writing with the idea that, like, what you get down doesn't have to sound good. Again, not exactly true for music. If it's not, if it doesn't read like a professional writer, if it reads like, basically, here's the idea as narrated by a kindergartner, I can always get those ideas down in whatever, crayon scribble they'll come to me, and then go back when it's done and try and make it sound halfway decent and give it some flow. But yeah, I think those are probably my big two.
I think there's an analogy there, because I wind up doing a lot of polishing afterwards. There's some composers that, like, want it to sound perfect, like, as soon as they're doing it, and especially guitar players, it bugs them, if the tone's not exactly right. And it's like, I couldn't care less if the tone's exactly right. It's like, I got this idea and it's coming out. I got to, kind of see where that kind of takes me. And sometimes, I'll run into a corner and I'll do the Patrick play, and I'll just like, you know what, I'm done for today, and just walk away, and then come back to it the next day, and it's like, I know where this goes. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it's a little more, let's drink until something breaks.
Holy crap! You guys just made me realize something that I never thought about. So I've been a drummer. I started in the 4th grade. I played in the school orchestra band until the 8th grade. I'm a rock and roll kid because of my parents. Like, I'm wearing a Led Zeppelin shirt. I got a Zeppelin tattoo. Like, that's the shit I love. I I know it's weird to say like all music. I like most music, but being a drummer, I just kind of do what sounds right. I play to whatever I have fun with. I never thought of that in the sense where it relates to why I write the way I write. I never thought of
That's
that until you
brilliant.
guys
We've
talked
made a
about that.
breakthrough.
Laissez-faire creativity.
And
No, oh, go ahead, Pat.
I was just gonna say, like, to be honest, I'm not planning on becoming. I would love to be a professional writer, but I'm not holding my breath, which is why I went to college, which is why I got the job I got, because that's what I'm assuming I'm going to retire. I'm not going to make money from the podcast. This is all for fun. And if I'm wrong, I get to laugh at myself.
I was told we'd be making money at some point.
Yeah.
They lied to us.
And if if I get published here and there and it picks up, great. If not, I'm always going to write, and I'm just having fun doing it. And I got a wife and a son, and those are the biggest accomplishments in my life. Everything after that's just icing on the cake. So whatever, if I never make it, I'm still gonna write. So I got a question that kind of builds off of that. Are you like that with music? Do you, if not doing, not composing, I don't know if on paper is the right term, but if you're not physically composing something or messing around with any instrument, are you always composing something in your head?
Oh yeah.
Can you not help you? Like if you hear whatever ambience, how do you say that word?
Ambience is, yeah.
Yeah, if you hear that just like in your day-to-day life, can you not help yourself? Because like I can't help myself but always think about 20 different stories. Are you like that with music?
Yeah, it sort of ruins. Like I was talking to my brother on the phone today, and he was cooking in the kitchen, and he had music on in the background, and it's like it was loud enough that I could hear it while I'm talking to him, and it was like just constantly my brain wants to go, what's that chord? And it's like, oh, here comes the chorus, and it's like, this is a great bridge, and it's annoying sometimes, but thankfully I have enough outlets for the music that it's like I get to do what, I get to exercise those demons, and somebody's paying me for it usually. If I wouldn't, my wife and I write, music, like pop music on the side just for fun, because that's a neat thing to do as well. And it's, I play in the wedding band, and it's I have another crazy job programming bell towers. Like you go to a church and sometimes they have like the sets of like the carillon bells that play tunes and stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do that. So every once in a while I'm doing that too. So it's like I have so many different outlets for that creativity, and I have other interests too. I love to goof around with electronics and goof around with the computer, and I teach a course at Cincinnati State. It's basically Pro Tools mixing and editing. And I've been redesigning that course to try and be able to do it online, because it's a little tricky teaching people how to use a piece of software, when you're not in the same room with them.
Right.
So
now,
all those things get me through the day.
I'm sure. And now, real quick, because I'm curious if it's the same thing as my job. So you say you program bell towers. Does that involve industrial computers, PLCs, programmable logic computers?
A little bit. They have the company that I work with is called Verdon, and they have proprietary hardware that plays the bells. Basically, just takes like an event list and then fires off, the clangers, ringing each one of the bells, the pneumatic pistons that are ringing them. So it's just taking music and trying to make that, work on that situation, considering they might not have any black keys on their particular bell tower, or they might have just one octave, or it may have 3 octaves, or they might be missing, one particular note that's in Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and so you have to figure out where to put that note because they don't have that one.
Yeah, because that's funny. I work on control systems at a poop plant, wastewater plant for my county. So my job definitely would apply in that sense. That'd be cool. It takes your music and it automates it.
Yeah. And they did well. I'm not writing the music. I'm sort of adapting, kind of favorite tunes, Christmas songs, and for church bells, there's the religious music and stuff like that. But they have also done this company. They do like Glockenspiel, which is like when the little German boy and girl come out, the little automatons and hit the bell and stuff like that. I think so.
Never knew that.
And so they've done stuff like that, and that's all programmed through the PLC with the timing of it and like the scheduling of it and all the rest.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Going back to an earlier thing you were talking about when you walked through the tester section or area where everyone's like hearing your music again and again. That's funny that you just brought up Christmas because I know this just doesn't apply to my job. It applies to whoever shops a lot. But I used to work before I moved out of Massachusetts. I worked at a company, Polar Beverages, and I delivered seltzer water and soda, and grocery stores from 8 to 14 hours every day. And when it was Christmas time, I wanted to go a little postal after the third day because every store would have the same fucking loop.
Yes.
Did you feel, I'm sorry to put you on the spot with this kind of probably rude question, but did you feel like you were the Christmas machine or something?
No, the struggle's real, man. That's always been the challenge for me for video game music, because there's a lot of tools that are available to make the music more interactive, but sometimes there's not the budget or the time needed to do that. I work on another game called Crowfall, which is, I think, just got into beta recently. And so I was writing music with that, and we did a little bit of some of the interactive stuff. But when you're writing, just sort of, it's called wallpaper music, which is kind of a negative term for it, but it's really just like, there's nothing interactive about this music. It's not reacting to the state of the game other than switching tracks when you go into battle, right? So it's you're always fighting. Somebody's going to be hearing this a jillion times, and it's like that's a good thing, because your ideas kind of get cemented in people's heads. And I've heard from lots of kids that played the game like 10 years, like Wizard 101 10 years ago, and it's like they'll never forget that music for as long as they live. And I always go, I'm really sorry about that. I say, I'm really sorry, eh?
I know that's a really popular game. I saw like 40 million players.
Yeah.
Good God.
Subscribers to the game. I think it might be up to 50 by now. It's hard to keep track of all that stuff. But yeah, there's a giant community online with it. And sometimes if I'm feeling down, I'll, Google my name and, find like memes that people have made of my music on Reddit. If this guy's like, I heard that, this theme in Wizard 101, make me feel like this. And I was just like, that's nice. So it works in a positive, but it's definitely like when you hear people say, it's like, I turn the music off and listen to my own music. Like I'll go on Twitch to watch people playing it just to see kind of what's going on, and they're playing their own music. And I'm like, I always count that as like, okay, we lost one, but it's like, I'll get it, we'll get them back. But I don't blame them, because it's like so many hours of listening to that music. Maybe they've just heard it as much as they possibly can hear it, and they want to move on. I completely understand that, but it's kind of my job to try and make the thing. It's like you don't give the player control of like the color palette of the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like somebody's deciding the art style, and not the player can't change that, based on their tastes. So, and it's like film scoring, it's like the film score is going to be what the film score is going to be. You can't kind of recreate that. But yeah, I'm always I'm fighting for that one person on Twitch who it's like I can get them to play the score instead of, their own playlist.
Brendan, you got anything you want to add to this?
No, it just sounds like tester syndrome all over again. It's you got to be okay with losing them if they've already given it 400 hours.
So just to name a few games for those that might be like, holy shit, I played that. Games that you were on, and I believe these are all through Acclaim. NFL QB Club 2001, All-Star Baseball 2002, the two Turok games, which was Turok Evolution and Turok 3. All-Star Baseball 2005. This one I thought was a little bit big. Gladiator, Sword of Vengeance. And then you did one called Pinball Hall of Fame. Like, these are so different from each other.
You haven't even gotten to my Hello Kitty titles.
Is that a thing?
That's a thing.
NBA Jam was one of them too.
NBA Jam. Yeah,
I
2004.
did not know you did Hello Kitty.
Let's pause there real quick, because is NBA Jam, not Hello Kitty, sorry. Is NBA Jam the one that you worked with Bootsy Collins on?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, tell me a little bit about that. And for those of you who might not know, Bootsy Collins did not quite make my list of favorite bassists, but he played with James Brown, and the man knew his way around that instrument.
Yeah, Parliament. He's kind of funky. He's he's a dude. He's a local cat, so it's like he shows up at a lot of shows downtown and events, and somebody knew him to call him for this, and I think they originally wanted him. He came in and he did this is NBA Jam 2004, and he came in and did there's different eras of basketball. I think they went from like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then current day, I guess at that time was in the 90s sometime, but and then they had like a different announcer do it in like the style of a basketball announcer from the 50s. He's bouncing the ball. Oh, he's throwing the peach basket up. I don't know what they said back in the 50s, but that kind
Patrick,
of
he's so much better at impressions than
He's a professional, Brennan.
ham is the word you're searching for. So and like that era, the visuals are in black and white, and there's like a little green filter applied to it. And then you went through the 60s, and then for the 70s, Bootsy was the announcer. So he was doing his whole, Bootsy thing, 70s funkadelic kind of spin on doing it. I'm not going to imitate him because I've been caught out doing it, and it's so embarrassing. So he came in to do the commentary. And then it was like, hey, so I'm writing this, track for the intro, and I kind of wrote it, hoping that he would do something on it. And it's like, here it is. He's like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, I could do something on that. So he threw his vocals on it, and he had a dude that he worked with put a rap on top of it. And it was like, okay, I never worked with the guy in the studio, but it's like, I've worked with Bootsy Collins. I co-wrote the track with Bootsy Collins.
It's pretty fucking cool.
It's a bullet on the resume, all right.
Yeah. I got lots of name droppy stories like that.
So another name that popped out at me was Michael Giacchino. And I was talking to Patrick, and in case somebody doesn't know who that is, he wrote the music for Lost. He wrote the music for the newer Star Trek movies, for The Incredibles, for Monsters Inc. Yep. And 100 other, really excellent movie soundtracks.
He's fantastic. He did some of the new Star Wars stuff too.
Oh, that's right. I think I did know that. So how was working with him?
Well, again, it's one of those bullet points that's, it's meant to encourage conversation like we're having right now. I had a phone call with him, and then I think I talked with his assistant maybe 3 or 4 times talking about it, what to do. It was for the game Alias, which the TV show that he wrote the score for, and it was kind of earlier on in his career. He did that, and he had done. I'm gonna embarrass myself by not being able to remember the title. It's like a old World War II dogfighting game. I think I hadn't played it anyway. So it's like he knew what video game composing was about. Now it differed from doing film scoring and stuff, but had a conversation with him where we kind of talked about the idea of it, and he wrote the music that was played in the levels, and then I wrote the cinema score for the game. So anytime it broke down into a cinema, I tried to like pull out my Giacchino chops and write like him, and write like he wrote for Alias, which is a great challenge. I don't know if you would say that I did a great job with it, but I think he was working on Lost at the time, actually. And so he was, I think, trying to move away from the kind of like 90s or early 2000s, like techno-y stuff that I think was in Alias. And he was trying to kind of get more orchestral. And I think he was like, well, that's what I was writing like back then, but maybe, a little more orchestral. And it's like, oh, okay. I kind of like the other style that we were writing in. But yeah, so I basically worked under his advisement in as much as he had time, because dude is busy.
I was gonna say if that was me, I would definitely not only make that a bullet point list, but I would probably bring it up, and I talked to him, a couple times.
Talk to him a couple times. Try not to be too impressed. Who wants to touch me?
Let's talk about we're saying who wants to touch me, so I feel like Hello Kitty is obviously the next subject we should talk about.
Well, if there's no My Little Pony game, I guess that's where we have to go.
I was so curious where you were going with that segue.
That's why I shut the hell up.
Sometimes I reach for something that just isn't there. My Little Pony. I've never written for My Little Pony.
Not yet.
Not yet. Hello Kitty. A friend was doing Hello Kitty Cruisers. I wrote the music for Hello Kitty Picnic. I recorded and edited the dialogue for. The girl that did the dialogue was named Whitney Zabo, and she's a fantastic local voice actress. And it was amazing just going into the studio with her and going, all right, so everything up about 15 octaves and, really cute. Go. And she was amazing. The only thing I had to tell her to do was like, okay, the pitch is dropping as you're getting tired, so crank it back up there again. And she'd go, Hello Kitty Picnic. So that was fun, but I also got to write the music that happened for that. So it's one of those, my friend always says a gig is a gig, or gig spelled backwards is gig. So, a writer writes, you just have to get out there, and whatever the job is, there's slow months at the Everhart household that, it's good to be able to fill in some of those blanks with other stuff coming in.
Sure, and I'm sure not everyone could say that they wrote music for a Hello Kitty game. I didn't even know those existed.
You're
man,
there's a target audience, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're supposed to know that those exist. Although I think you could probably put some really cute outfits together, Patrick.
Yeah, everyone would laugh at me, but I'm used to that. So
Hello Kitty's wearing a Led Zeppelin shirt.
Yes. And then I noticed that you did a casino game, which is pretty funny because it's the Hard Rock Casino, which I'm right near Atlantic City. Yeah. And they just came out with a Hard Rock Casino a year ago. I like going there because I love looking at all the neat shit that they got, seeing some Beatles attire and stuff, and just saying, wonder what would happen if I tried to wear it.
Heck yeah. No, I did some music for like a pinball game, and there have been I've met some people that are just like, don't want to be known for that thing that they did. And it's like, frankly, I like writing in different styles. And if I can do Hello Kitty, and I can do, Crowfall, and I can do a pinball game, it's like, it's all a lot of, I get to write music, and it's not, you kind of have to divorce yourself a little bit from the game itself, as Crow and Perfect Weapon taught me. That the games are terrible, and I'm like, yeah, but there's one review out there that says the one redeeming feature is that the music's okay, and I was like, yes. You got to take responsibility for what you can take responsibility for.
Do you read are there reviews is that a thing, like reviews on composed games?
Not as much for the ones that I'm doing now, because they've just been out for so long. But a lot of times, well, yeah, back in the day, it's like you had the PlayStation Magazine and whatever, and they're doing reviews of it, and they always break it down into gameplay and story, and audio is always like the last little tiny 3-sentence paragraph. For the most part, everything sounded pretty good. But so I mean, not as much anymore with the stuff that I'm doing, but I do like to go out and hear what people think about it. And it's, you want to please everybody, but at some point you're just going, okay, well, that guy's clearly, drunk. And I don't know what that one's talking about. I mean, it's not everybody's going to like it. So I get it.
That's true. I used to be a collector of a few video game magazines, and I just enjoyed reading how things were made. I wish that they dove into that a little bit more. So you still compose for video games?
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed? And take this any direction you want. What have you noticed from the 90s when you started to today? So that's what, a 30-year gap? I guess depending on what year.
You didn't have to put it like that, but sure.
I mean, you're a young man. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's the best. I like that one better. What do I think of? I mean, I'm blessed to be able to, still do the thing that I like and still have the stuff that I write be, like I still think my voice is kind of, relevant enough to be in, some of the stuff. And it's fun. And it's like, I have some kids, email me every once in a while. And it's like, I want to do this. And this one kid grew up listening to Wizard 101. And it's like, that's why he's doing, music, why he's studying music now. And it's like, that's cool. I mean, just to be able to have that kind of impact on like anybody's listening to is just, super flattering. It's hard to believe. It's one of those, I can't believe I get to do this, and it's like, it's gotten, it's what I do. So it's like, it's not, I don't wake up and just like am bowled over by it, but it's like every once in a while, like now it's like my mom's like, you're being interviewed tonight. It's like, do you have a new job? And I'm like, well, no, somebody, he wants to he's got, podcast. And she's like, for your music. Yeah. Like, okay. I guess that's cool. There's so many things out there in the world that it's like, I think there's going to be, everybody's got can have a piece of it without feeling like they're, on top of the world.
I hear you. I'm a 31-year-old man. I still got my N64 and that Turok. I got my Turok games, and that's why I seeked you out, and I was like, holy shit, he's on Twitter, and he replied to me. That's neat. Like, it's weird. The whole, just like when I was a kid, I remember I had a PS2, and there was a internet adapter. There was an external piece to the PS2 that you had to buy, and the game I had was SOCOM Navy SEALs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is neat. I got a headset, and I could talk to the NPCs, and they're pretty smart. I thought they were for back then. And the internet connection was shit.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I'll go on my phone, and the processing, the processor on it is just like, it blows probably the PS2 out of the water. It's insane.
It blows spacecraft, things that have gone into space out of the water.
Right. Yes. The first spacecraft for sure. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And have you seen the program that was written for that? Because I saw pictures. It was like a group of women that wrote it. And if I'm wrong, please forgive me and don't email me that I'm an idiot, because I'm just a simple man. And
you've got enough of those.
Yeah, So the program that I saw a picture of, it was just as tall as this woman, the programmer, and she's average height, like 5 feet something inches, and it's insane what programs were like back then. I used to be a tester for my first job in New Jersey for this company that worked in radio frequency controllers, and when I started there, what do we do? They said we do literally anything from making the controllers that have those little bubbles in Nike shoes, like the sneakers, from those to bags at hospitals, to this one laser that, real quick story, is when they were, okay, so I'm in a big, massive warehouse, I guess is the best way to paint this picture. Huge open room. I'm a tester. You can see the assembly crew. You can see the engineers. Like, there's no walls between us. So on the side near me, and this is like 400 foot wide building, you can see these outside company people working on a laser, and it's pointed at a brick. It's a laser that will pierce through a brick, and there's nothing behind it. And behind them are testers and assembly people. Someone had to say to these very smart people, "That's a laser. That's not like one of those kinds that you trick a cat. That will kill someone."
Yeah. Put a real good burn on you.
the reason why I bring this up is because I worked on things as old as 2000 to when I worked there in 2015. The circuit boards, the components, the architecture of the hardware, it was so weird how different it was over a span of 15 years.
Mhm.
And it's real interesting because I went to school for computer electronics and I like looking at the insides of. I wouldn't dare do it with like a modern console because God, I cannot imagine. I wouldn't understand it. But like looking at an NES or N64, it's just so neat
Yeah.
how it's constructed. And thinking of video games, like you said earlier in the conversation, that a guy made this game, programmed it when it was 13. Like there was one guy, that terrible example. One guy programmed ET for the Atari.
Hmm.
Like you can't have one or two or three people program a game and have it be okay. You might. I'm gonna throw out you might, but I doubt you can have three people make a big game.
Yeah.
And because my cousin works for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who, but up in Massachusetts he works for a video game company. I don't know what his title is. Yeah, fuck it. He worked on that game, Game of Thrones,
Mhm.
that came out on the phone. I don't know much about it, but I just picked his brain because I'm curious how all that world works because I like the behind the scenes stuff.
Mhm.
And I said, just hypothetically speaking, I don't want to make the game, but if you were to make a MMORPG, how would that work? And he goes, let's put it this way: if you're new, you want to start with an RPG. Reason being is because that's a log cabin. An MMORPG is like building a skyscraper. Do you have the money for that? Do you have the manpower for that? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't. Well, I don't really know if this all has a question, but I just find it fascinating. And I've never really talked to a composer that's done video games. Have you noticed, like, I guess, the size of companies with testers, with game developers, with the behind the scenes guys from, say, the Crow game to the pinball game? Like, do you notice a big difference, or do the sizes of teams grow as the technology advances?
It depends on the kind of company and the kind of game they're making, obviously,
Mhm.
because like the big MMO stuff, it's like there's server issues and people that actually take care of the community and listen to people's complaints or where they're having problems or doing bug reporting and stuff like that, and it's just wickedly complicated. But then you get down to like for some mobile games. I'm working on a mobile game now, and I think the team size is maybe 15 people all in, and that's everybody from I'm doing music, there's a sound guy, and then there's a few guys doing animation. There's probably a programmer or two. I have a friend named Jules Watcham who his company's called Atui, and they did like Chicken Wiggle, and he's got some other like kind of classic sort of side scroller games, and he releases like they're on the Switch marketplace and stuff like that. And it's like those games are usually, I mean, if you want to do it enough, one guy can actually make those kind of games. When it gets into like just the massive 3D stuff, and then you need people that really understand modeling and programmers that know how to pull off amazing tricks with stuff like that. So I mean, I'm barely a part of that process, so I've gotten to kind of sort of witness as much of it as I can, and it's really fascinating. I just sit in the programmers office and listen to them talk about whatever memory leak, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but this is fascinating. So I like to see how the sausage is made too. I mean, it's interesting to me just to go sit. I toured Crowfall Artcraft Entertainment in Austin. I went down there and finally got to see what they're doing, and they're like, that game is just so complex, and the tools they're using are incredible that they've programmed, and their proprietary stuff is amazing. Like it's a really super sophisticated engine, and it's like I toured around these guys and they're super nice, and they're like, now check this out. These are voxels, and you can do this, and there's different states that this can, this level can be in. And I nodded a lot. And when they finished explaining, I'm like, that is effing amazing. Thank you for showing me that. I hope there's no test because, wasn't really following it. Just a musician. Dumb it down a shade for me, Doc.
Brennan, jump in, bud.
I'm just thinking that's like, my brother-in-law works with planes, and he'll talk about something super complex, and I'll hit him back with something like, yeah, explain Coltrane harmony to me or something like that. Bet you can't. You want to have a contest? See who's the smartest
while we're
guy in the
swinging
room.
manhood around, ever heard of Schoenberg?
So
what grade do you teach, Brennan?
K through 5, so Schoenberg doesn't come up that often. Thank God.
I really think 12-tone rose should be part of the syllabus of a normal elementary school.
Patrick, I don't know if you're familiar with Schoenberg, but oh my God, would you ever hate it?
I'm not. I'm just laughing because it sounds funny, so I'm mirroring your emotions.
German names are funny.
There will be a test, by the way.
I will fail that test.
No, so I mean, for the most part, I had a 4-year bachelor education, and then spaced my master's over the course of 2 years so that I could teach kindergarten, 5th grade level music theory. I don't break out the big guns too often. Although
I've always thought though that like when I was in 5th grade, I remember them trying to teach us like with the Norton scores, and it's like, here's a Bach chorale, and I'm like, why wouldn't you start with, the Beatles or something that like makes sense to kids? Like, here's music that you like listening to. This is why it's interesting to listen to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, we don't do Bach chorales in 5th grade. That would be, I don't want to do that.
I didn't want to do it in high school either. Not that they weren't, amazing pieces of music. It's just, that wasn't necessarily, that's not how many people are getting jobs in classical, orchestral music. I can probably count it on, 2 hands. Whereas like there's so many different outlets for music, and there's so many different things that music theory is good, to know about.
No, I mean, as far as music theory, and again, I won't dive deep because nobody but me and you is interested in this at all. But I mean, ending 5th grade is pretty much, introducing everything up to all your note values up to 16th, knowing what dots do, being able to read bass clef and basic harmony. It's just not that complex. But that's again why I do piano lessons on the side, because I do get the opportunity to flex that muscle every so often, and it's a lot of fun. My besides education, my primary major was jazz composition and arrangement. So it's kind of fun to be able to use that information in some capacity or another.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm just going to ask you more questions about music education, but
have at it.
We need to get back to the bloody half torsos.
Oh, only if you
what
want.
Do you guys? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I didn't really have a chance to listen to. What are you normally talking about?
Nothing.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt, Brennan. So basically,
not music education.
We taught. Our whole goal is to learn and have an audience learn about the creators behind the art that they make. The denominator in almost everyone is that it has something to do with horror or dark fiction. And I said, well, Turok 3 is I'd qualify that as dark fiction. So yeah, I liked it, and fuck it, let's talk to them.
All right, that's my touchdown. Okay, good. I know where I'm coming in now.
Do you happen to like horror films?
You know what? I did like back in the day, and it's like I'm horribly out of touch with it now. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and it's so obviously, we're mostly watching Disney Channel right now, but I liked them back in the day. They got kind of, some of the extreme stuff. It's weird when you become a parent, like how that that sort of tweaks a little bit where it's like, I remember being younger and like, finding this kind of angsty stuff, really, fascinating and interesting. And then there's, I think, a certain point as you're getting older where it's like, oh, that's just getting uncomfortable. I was inside a hospital and saw something like that, and it was a little too real. But it's like I always loved it when I was a kid. I mean, I watched all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and Hellraisers and stuff like that.
Did you ever, or do you listen to a film and say, I could do better, or maybe I like that, I'm going to use that for my own piece?
Well, that would be stealing and wrong. So
maybe influenced is a better word.
Oh yeah, no, I'll go on the record and say I'll steal it if I think it'll work in my situation. There's so many. I mean, that idea, those 3 notes that the guy's using is not, isn't unique, but it's like there's always these great ideas out there. And it's, if anything I've wrote, if somebody can take like a germ of an idea that I didn't really fully develop and continue to kind of make it work better, I'm like, that's fantastic. I mean, kids have done like remixes of Wizard 101 stuff, and every once in a while I hear, something crazy. A friend of mine wrote the music for the Mission Impossible game on N64 back in the day, and a classical guitarist just posted him playing it on YouTube, and it was like, it's amazing. It's like really, really well done. It was really good writing, and then the arrangement that the guy did. I mean, it's impossible not to feel just flattered that somebody's taking an idea that you've done and sort of built on it like that. So yeah, I hear things that I want to use, but it's usually not like, it's not that melody that I'm interested in. It's maybe that tonality, which is not something that I don't feel like I'm stepping on anybody's toes or stealing any of their, hard fought ideas.
Going along that road of films, and this would definitely be appropriate. I recommended this to Brennan. One of the writers on this film called Mirror Mask was Neil Gaiman. It's a fun UK-based fantasy, and the soundtrack. I like buying soundtracks I really love on CDs. I still collect CDs, and I don't know if you guys have heard of Ian Bellamy. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but the soundtrack on that is pretty fun. It's different, but Mirror Mask is definitely a film that I would say maybe check out sometime. And the other composer I wanted to talk about was James Horner. I'm a big fan of his Braveheart soundtrack and the Titanic soundtrack. So I was curious if either one of you had a favorite film composer besides John Williams that we already covered.
Damn it. Gabriel Yared, who did the score, I think, for Talon and Mr. Ripley. That's like one of the creepiest stories, like films that I think I've watched, just because it's like it's so grounded in, kind of somebody just getting caught. To me, that movie was like so much about like the knot in your belly that I remember from like when I was 15 or something, and I, broke a car window and tried to, run away, and knowing that, oh my God, that's out there somewhere, and it's like it might come back to me, like you're gonna get in trouble, that kind of feeling, and that his stuff like perfectly encapsulates that for me. Alan Silvestri, who did all the Back to the Future stuff, was amazing. He also wasn't that experienced as a composer when he did the first Back to the Future, and I'm like, damn, you could have fooled me, because that's such a perfect score.
And what a movie to do.
Yeah. And of course, Danny Elfman, just sort of created a lot of the genre that I sort of play around with, and dark fantasy, and like the Batman score, and all that stuff is like super creepy. The Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas.
I have to throw Hans Zimmer out there. I feel like he is as much as John Williams is still working, I feel like he's the closest thing that, the 2000 teens have to 1970s and 1980s John Williams.
Yeah.
And whether, they are technically proficient or not, I absolutely love what he did with the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtracks.
Yeah.
The first 3 anyway. After that, it was just kind of, it was recycling. You know,
You're
I don't know.
good to even count, like, you pull the three together. I think I get really foggy on them after like 1.5.
Well,
The first one was
I'm a really
amazing.
as far as soundtracks go, you know, I'm a big fan of the movies, and up until the third one, they were still he was still writing, you know, original themes for characters and situations and even ships.
Mhm.
And then, you know, like you watched the fourth one, and they would use the theme for a character that was killed off in the third one for just a random situation. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're recycling at this point. Um, Dude definitely collected a paycheck on it, you know, and just remixed his own stuff. But
I think there was a lot of people. My understanding of that, for at least the first one, was that there's a ton of different people who wound up working on it, and he was like the name that kind of provided some of those things, and then some other people came in to help with the other stuff. But yeah, that score is amazing. Inception is one of my
That's a great one.
brilliant. And
Yeah.
Rain Man from Hans Zimmer, like, back, speaking of the 80s, that was one of my favorite scores. Kind of a more pop score, but also solid.
Didn't Zimmer do Interstellar too? Because that's a really good one.
He's been involved, I think, with all of Christopher Nolan's movies, or at least all the recent ones, and I feel like he's knocked most of them out of the park. Especially kind of the way I'm thinking of, like Dunkirk and The Dark
Mhm.
Knight. His ability to just kind of like crescendo tension in his soundtracks, it's nuts.
He's
And
a
then
real good. He's like a sound designer, composer too, where it's like he's really. There's so many layers to what the stuff that he's doing. And he has so many techniques about. All right, so the strings are doing this, but we're putting a synth, you know, sub bass in underneath that. That's like so far above kind of where I'm normally thinking when I'm writing.
yeah, and I loved in the I can't remember the name, but the third Batman movie, where he went really percussion heavy. Even for him, very very percussion heavy, and it was cool because he could have again kind of mimicked the success of the Dark Knight soundtrack, but instead he kind of took it in a different direction to match the
Yeah.
tone of the film, a little bit more raw, a little bit more almost kind of primal. The other composer I'll throw out, and I'm gonna probably butcher his name, is Alexandre Desplat. And he's done so many good movie soundtracks, but the one of my favorites is the very last Harry Potter movie, where he took John Williams' score and just kind of added, you know, a whole new layer to it. They added a brand, you know, all the way there in movie number 8. They added a new theme, and it was very haunting. It was gorgeous, and I really thought that whole you've watched 7 movies up to that point, you know the main themes, and they managed to do something, or he managed to do something new with that was really really cool. And then he's done, like, you know, 100 other movies that are all very notable and, you know, excellent as well.
Yeah, these guys are scary talented. Like, even getting into, you know, 150,000 feet of them, it's just like, oh my God, they just have there's a whole structure there. And it's like, they work with these guys and they know this guy doing that. It's like, I would be so intimidated going into, you know, a feature film like that, with the kind of schedules that they have and the kind of budgets that they have, and like how much you're burning having the, you know, London Symphony Orchestra in a studio for 15 minutes to try and record your score, you know, and you transpose something incorrectly and it's like you've just spent $200,000.
The best part of orchestration is, you know, French horn does this, and this is an octave, this is an E flat. But no, you're right. And the time crunch, so, you know, I was thinking only in terms of, we've shot all this and we need the soundtrack done in X number of weeks. But like you said, even we've booked the London Symphony Orchestra for 45 minutes. Go to produce anything of quality. Never mind, you know, what these guys come out with, what these people come out with. It's insanity.
Yeah, I do really like that. You're talking about the themes coming in. I like when a movie score, it's such an old way to write. And I mean, it goes back to me, to Star Wars, where it's like everything has a theme, and it's like, you know, it's just a really great way to kind of develop a shorthand for, like, it's like, when these two characters are meeting, you can take their two themes and see what they, how you could blend them together and see kind of what happens there. When Anakin's theme from the prequels kind of turns into the darker Empire theme, at the end of the prequels, it's fascinating. So I really like when there's a theme. I don't necessarily care that it doesn't have to be so literal that every time that person's on the screen, that theme has to be playing. But it's a really great way to just kind of have some sort of touchstone that you can, kind of build on in a scene.
Absolutely. And I'll throw Prokofiev on that list. No, I'm a sucker for that too. I love that. Like the one of my favorite John Williams soundtracks is Superman. Just the theme is so absolutely iconic. And as much as I love newer superhero movies, most of them, even though the hero might have a theme, it's not. You're not walking out of the theater humming it. With
Right.
the exception of maybe the Avengers.
Yeah.
They're
Which
good,
used
but
most okay, if I'm not incorrect, Infinity War, didn't they use a lot of the theme from Guardians of the Galaxy? I thought
I
that
don't know.
theme was from Guardians, because I remember watching Guardians and being like, this is a really great theme. And then I heard it in Infinity War before the Guardians were even, because they don't come in till halfway through
Yeah.
that film, I think. And I heard the theme and I was like, wait a minute. And I'm like, okay, but somebody went, this theme is great. Let's just use it everywhere.
They did have a cool theme. I don't know that it was quite as memorable as a Superman, but it was a really interesting theme. The beauty of an Endgame and an Infinity War is they had so many characters and so many movies to build up with. They probably didn't even write a score for it. They just sampled
hits.
everything else. Yeah, exactly. They made a greatest hits album and played it all
Greatest
the way
hits
through.
of Marvel. Yeah.
So I can't believe I didn't bring this up, but I was just watching before we're recording this. I watched Jurassic Park because I was scrolling through Netflix, oh, nothing's on, and I'm like, oh, well, let's watch this movie for the 100th time because I fucking love that movie. But John Williams, his soundtrack, is the main theme in that. I love it. It's one of my favorites, and again, I can't believe I didn't think of that earlier.
If you meet kids of sort of my generation, kids that are now not kids, they go back to Star Wars and ET, and it's newer, I think, younger people like yourself, a lot of them were first introduced to his work through Jurassic Park. So it's that's a lot of people's oh man, that was just it's so evocative and so nostalgic, just so kind of puts you there, which is weird that's what you remember about Jurassic Park. It's oh, it's my childhood. If people ate my childhood, I guess.
Me and Brandon were
very good point.
Me and Brandon were talking about Jurassic Park, and both fans of the first one. I can't speak for him on the other two. I like the other two, but I've never seen the Chris Pratt ones, and I don't really give a shit to watch them. Yeah. I love Chris Pratt. I just haven't seen him. I don't care to.
Yeah, he's amazing, and I liked him in Guardians of the Galaxy. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say 1993 was the year that Hollywood perfected special effects and then forgot everything they knew about it. I the Jurassic Park is the best example. And there was another one I saw recently that I guess I didn't realize it came out the same year, but it was the same thing, very practical effects, and they look better than anything, coming out now. But I mean, Jurassic Park is just that movie to hold up as this is how you do special effects. You watch that movie, holy shit, 27 years later, and it's the special effects are perfect. Not pretty good, they're perfect.
Well, I got a few from that time, that year. Hocus Pocus was one. Nightmare Before Christmas, The Sandlot, Tombstone, Dazed and Confused. There's others, but those are pretty good examples. Not the effects on all of them. Oh, and
it's a good movie, yeah.
Yeah,
I love Tombstone.
That was really good. Sorry, I was going back to you going, I don't want to see the Chris Pratt ones. I saw the first one just because I was like, how the hell can you take the message of Jurassic Park, which was don't F with Mother Nature, And then, oh, look, they effed with Mother Nature again. And look what happened. Like, it's just, I don't understand how you try and tell that story again. Because the story was about, don't do this. And so every other story has just been about, okay, don't do that again.
Well, they should really bring a T-Rex to a bigger city.
That question though has never been more relevant. You know, you watch Jurassic Park 2 and you're like, "Oh my gosh, did you guys learn nothing? Don't reopen the park." Yeah. Jurassic Park 3, don't go back to the damn island. Like, did you not learn anything? No. And we're living that now. Then 2015 rolls around and they reopen the park again.
Yeah. And they just keep reopening the park because we'll never not reopen the park. I mean, you got to reopen the park.
Well, like,
wow, that got contemporary real quick.
What about Crystal Lake? I mean, like, why is that campsite? Why is that whole place? I know that in one of the movies they like closed it down, but if kids are just seeing a bunch of dead bodies, I don't know, man. If I was the EPA, I'd be like, let's shut that shit down.
Can we find another place for this camp? My favorite like thriller movies like that have always been ones that don't rely on that trope of like, you know, here's somebody doing something stupid so that, you know, you can stress out the audience and just like, you know, don't do that. I've always liked what was it called? The Arrival.
What's that?
Is that the
Amy
Jeremy
Adams?
Renner one? Yeah, yep.
Yeah. And it's like they meet the aliens, and I don't know what you do with spoilers, but it's like it was just so neat that like they trusted the audience to kind of go in and figure things out, even though it was kind of a difficult, sort of like Inception, where it's like they weren't really holding your hand too much to like work your way through some of the more difficult plot elements.
I think the director I could be totally wrong here. I thought it was Denis Villeneuve. And he's definitely a director who trusts his audience. He did the newer Blade Runner movie. He did the Dune. I think he's doing the Dune movie that's coming out.
Okay.
At some point.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's definitely an intelligent director that makes his audience think, as opposed to just handing them dinosaurs on a silver platter.
I just want to bring up, I don't know if this is random, but I really enjoyed The Matrix. And when the first time my friend tried explaining it to me, he said, so it's about a world that's around you, but it's not really. I'm like, we don't even smoke weed yet. What are you talking about?
I specifically remember going to see that movie I think I saw that movie like, you know, 3 or 4 times in the theaters. And it was like, it was one of the only films that I walked out just like going, you know, oh my God, you know, it's like, wow, that would explain a lot. I mean, they're drawing on such classic, you know, like philosophical ideas and stuff. It was just such a cool primer for some of that basic philosophy for, you know, knuckleheads like me.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I got one more question. You and your wife are in a wedding band. So when did that start and how's that? Because I've been the videographer for a few weddings, and the last one I did, my wife was like, "You got to do it. You're making like a few hundred per gig." I'm like, "Do you know how much time I spend in editing this shit?"
Oh, and
the last one I did, I'm pretty sure the wife was Brazilian. The other one was from a different country. I don't even want to guess because I'm not sure. But I got no list of what the fuck to expect. I thought there'd be a best man speech, maid of honor speech. Nope. At one point, the bride and groom were on their knees, and some guy they weren't speaking in English at any point. I didn't know what I was doing, and there were 2 hours. I was held up for 2 hours after, and to get my money, it was fun. So my experience with weddings they're not fun to do.
Always get paid up front, McDonough.
Yeah. Good call, man.
It's I mean, it's like everything is higher stakes, right? That's why, you know, there's people that do flowers and there's people that do, you know, wedding flowers, and it's a whole different pay grade. Yeah, but in my experience, the wedding planner idea, like there is no wedding planner. At most of these things, there might be a facility person that, you know, is kind of trying to keep everything to a schedule. My wife handles the schedule. She meets with the bride and groom, and they go through the whole thing. Like, what are you doing? Are you doing a bouquet toss? Are you, do you want to do any special dances and all that kind of stuff? So it gets less stressful the more kind of upfront and the more experience you have doing it. I mean, we basically kind of riff it now, just like, okay, this song always plays, and a lot of times the only like critical thing I could say about it is that a lot of times mostly the bride, sometimes the bride and groom, a lot of times the bride and the groom's families as well, where they, they're getting in. They're not considering that this isn't really a party for the bride and groom. It's for the, family and friends of the bride and groom. So the bride and groom come in and like, I love the Black Keys. Can you just play all their, music? And it's like, no, it's great music, but it's not necessarily what everybody wants to hear. And it's like they go, absolutely do not play any of the cheesy, wedding tunes. Don't play Don't Stop Believing, and don't play, Celebration or Cool in the Gang. And you're just like, okay, we'll try it. And then as soon as this isn't working, we're going back to plan B, our plan. And then they're like, okay, sure, that's fine. And you play a few tunes and it's like the dance floor's empty. All right. Celebrate good times. And everybody comes on the thing, and it's like it's dumb, and it's overdone, it's cliche, but it's like it's a cliche because they're fun tunes, and they work when you're just trying to let loose and have fun. Absolutely. I mean, we got a lot of good stories. It's fun doing it. We met in that band, so we've been doing it for a long time. We started dating, and the rest of the band was like, are you sure this is a good idea? Probably. I don't know.
All right. So one song, if you could erase one song from existence, never have to play it again, what would you pick?
Brown Eyed Girl, probably.
Oh, okay.
No, I take that back. It's dun dun dun, Sweet Caroline.
Yep. Okay.
That song drags so hard.
Yeah.
As Boston Red Sox fans, the guys that have been to those games live, yeah.
It's a big thing here because the Ohio State University or Ohio State or whatever school, like they've claimed it too. I can't believe how many schools have claimed, like how many areas have claimed that song.
Well, that's just it. Is and I'm putting myself out there saying it, but as a really big Red Sox fan, it's just not that good a song. So when you hear it 500 times, it's like, okay, over it.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I can turn my head off to some pretty dumb music and just be like, okay, this is fun. You try and find, okay, this is what I like about this tune, even though I don't particularly like that. And there's tunes that I like listening to that I don't like playing, and vice versa, that I don't like playing, but shame on me, I guess. No, there's songs that just don't, aren't, I would think that they'd be fun to play, but they aren't that fun to play. And songs that I hate listening to that are actually kind of interesting to play. Playing keyboards, though, like I get to do, I'm not just playing piano, it's like the string part, and sometimes there's like a synth bass in there, and sometimes there's horns in there. And I try and get all the sounds. Like I have an iPad, and I have like another keyboard that's like with triggering sounds from other stuff. So I'm trying to do 15 things at once. Like, so if a song's boring enough, I'll just like start giving myself more things to do in that song. It's like, I think I hear an organ part in there. So, okay. Now at least it's, challenging to myself. But I mean, you play the music over and over again. We try and learn new songs as we can, but we've found that, if you learn like the song that's hot on the radio, it's like, it's probably not going to be usable in, a year's time.
Absolutely. Brendan, any final questions?
No, I would just say that's one of my favorite lessons to teach if I have a bass student is fills, for that exact reason, because there are too many bands out there that apparently just threw a bass into somebody's hand who didn't know what to do with it and said you were allowed to do player. Yeah, exactly. You were allowed to do whole notes and that is it. Teaching a young person to love this instrument is not possible if they have to wait 5 minutes every time they hit a note to do something else. So
yeah, sorry for the distant callback, but you're talking about your favorite harmonic bass players or melodic bass players, and I always think of Flea.
Yep.
The stuff he did with the Chili's, because his stuff is so. I mean, he's not. I read like interviews and stuff with him where he was like, when he was a kid, it was all just about, faster and louder and the normal kid stuff. And then as he kind of matured, he started getting into melodies, and some of the stuff he does with the Chili's is just beautiful melodic lines going on. And then obviously Paul McCartney is the other melodic bass player that I like listening to.
Definitely. The one of my favorite things about Flea is because, obviously as a bass teacher, I've done a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Should hope so.
Right? Yeah, exactly. He puts a lot of thought into where he plays a note on his on the neck. Like you'll see him playing a relatively high note on his lowest string just because of the tone he gets from playing it on the 15th fret versus playing it, way back down near the headstock.
Right.
And just that thought and playing something in a much harder way just to affect the final outcome of the music. Like you got to appreciate that.
That's the depth. There's like, okay, so everybody thinks music is like, well, it's the key and and there's so much like once you've learned the mechanics of, how your instrument works, there's so much more listening to do, about like intonation if you're a singer or like a horn player, like really getting into the intonation and like where that is. And, sometimes you're going to want the third to be flat, you're going to have to pull it down a little bit. And then where you're placing the notes, especially for bass players and drummers, it's like getting the bass player and the drummer kind of locked together on that thing. That's my favorite part about it is like, once we've learned a song and I'm not worried about, do I remember what the chords are, but now it's like, okay, now I can listen to the drummer and like where he's placing that note and try and do something with the guitar player so that we're not just like, stepping on each other's feet constantly.
Yeah. And you just have to come to terms with the fact that it's a lifelong process. I'm going to butcher the quote, but I think it was Pablo Casal, the cellist, when he turned, I think it was 84, said something along the lines of, I think I'm just starting to get the hang of this thing.
Next year, I'll have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Nelson.
I think that's a lot about art is like, you have to be, it's too, like I go back and listen to stuff that I wrote, just even a few years ago, and it's like, it gets cringy just because you're like, I've learned so many things, from there. It's like, you don't have to be getting paid for it, but it's like your love of the thing needs to drive you to make it interesting, or else it's going to be kind of obnoxious, an obnoxious career if you're not trying new things and learning new things about the process along the way.
Absolutely. Just get stuck on Brown Eyed Girl.
Sweet Caroline.
Is there anything else that you want anyone to know, or are there any final questions that you have for us, Nelson?
Do you guys have product coming out?
For books?
Yeah. Or whatever.
No, I got 2 shorts published, and that's about it at the moment.
Cool. Where are they published?
I can message you after this.
Oh, okay. Too shy to plug it, huh?
Well, no, it's through Crystal Lake Publishing, and they are on 2 anthologies, on a format or a type of what do you even call this, Brendan? Flash fiction. Flash fiction is just I don't know, 100 words to 1,200 words, 1,500. I don't know what the exact word count is, but they're short stories. They're shorter than a short story.
Short stories. Like
Short stories.
Short stories.
Yep.
Yeah.
My favorite collection of short stories was Stephen King's Skeleton Crew.
Yep.
Yes.
That had The Mist in it, and I was like, oh, that was a great short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it, the raft in it too, which is that's the visuals on that one are not going to leave me anytime soon.
But it's because his characters are so good. Like, I mean, the stories are okay, and everybody like gets like down with the stories, but it's like you only care about those stories because he takes time actually developing characters.
Yeah, he's definitely good at what he does. That's for sure. Where can people follow you?
YouTube, I've got a channel where I'm doing some kind of teardowns of some of the tracks that I've written. Mostly Wizard 101 stuff. There's also a game called Pirate 101 that I've done some of this for. I've also started, I wrote music for a game called Vex a long time ago. It was one of my favorite projects, so I just started reconstituting those things and remixing those tracks a little bit, and doing like a deep dive on those, exploring just sort of the process a little bit more. So, if any of that's interesting to anybody, that's probably where you'll hear enough, you'll hear way more than you ever wanted to about, the deeper into the deeper dive into the process.
Well, we could put that link on the show notes. That'd be cool. And how about Twitter? Where can people follow you on there?
It's just at Nelson Everhart, I think.
EverHart. Brennan, have you heard of Buzz Book Expo 2020?
I sure as hell hope so, because I'm about to tell you about it. So readers, book reviewers, podcasters, librarians, booksellers, and lovers of great scary books, by the time you hear this, it's going to be Thursday the 20th, and you've got 2 days to prepare yourself because Buzz Book Expo is just around the corner. Buzz Book Expo is a live streaming event in which publishers will be announcing all the great new horror fiction releases they have to offer through the coming year. There's going to be interviews, Q&As, presentations, book cover reveals, and more from all of your favorite horror publishers, and it is all for free. You can spend 2 days immersed in exciting book talk from publishers and authors alike, and it takes place, like I said, this coming Saturday, August 22nd into Sunday the 23rd. And you can find out more, including links to the expo, at marysangi.wordpress.com/buzz-book-expo-2020. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Brennan, as always, for being my co-pilot, sir. And Nelson, thank you so much for giving us your time, almost 2 hours. Appreciate that, man.
I'm a teacher, man. I can talk forever.
And everybody, check out Buzz Book Expo. It's going to be pretty awesome. Publishers all over the world, as Brennan just said. Thanks for joining tonight, and we hope you enjoyed this.